Hey, Paul Howe, CSAT Way, sent an article on active shooter retraining for Uvalde. And a friend, student, not in this area, he keeps up with the events there and saw this article out of, I think it was San Antonio, and a lot of issues in this article. And so when I don't bash the officers. I appreciate them retraining and bringing them up to speed. What I bash is the trainers, and I have to bring up points that I see are unsafe. I've got about 40 years in the business, a lot of live fire. And so what happens is I see things here, I'm going to bring them up with you, that the state will mandate training and sometimes it's substandard training. Now, the officers have no issue. I'm glad they're training. The problem is the trainers are bringing in to execute this training. A lot of issues here. And so what I'm going to do is go through some pictures that were in the article. Anytime they put pictures out, people will mimic or try to replicate that training and say it's good training. Well, it's not so much. Now, what ends up happening here, when you start seeing some of the stills, I could start from everything from the corner clear. I won't get into tactics, how to break a corner. But what I have is a number 2 officer, weapon too high. And with that type, flash suppressor is venting into the side of his number 1 man or his fellow officer. We have officers in the back. Somebody has brought in this high port technique. Well, now you have muzzles, and some officers, they may have the strength and endurance to hold that muzzle up through a whole operation. But what happens is those muzzles float around other officers' heads, and they vent sideways. You not only have to worry about the bullet going forward, the muzzle blast going right and left. We have an officer in the back, and same thing, muzzle high. Things I'll tell you, if they're not practicing these mechanics on a flat range, they're doing, it's just take a punch training. And so I don't blame these officers, I blame the trainers coming in. A couple things I look at here as a trainer right now, if they're running sims, because I see mags in the weapon and no eye protection. I'm not sure if they're sim bolts. Don't know who's running or how they've scrubbed it. The problem is we have to look at the training because we get officers shot all the time across the United States in sim training. It can be dangerous if you don't have your safety protocols down. Now, officer here, flash suppressor, again, venting in, he needs to be closer and the weapon needs to be at a low ready. So what happens is it's a modified heavy head, I get it, but that muzzle has to be forward of that first officer. If not, he's putting that first officer in jeopardy. That first officer may decide to go right or left and can push that muzzle or eat that muzzle, especially if that second officer is taking a shot. Now, what we have here, back in the rear, so other officers, muzzles, again, by heads. You cannot see and clear with a muzzle up that high in front of you. You have to discriminate. Muzzles need to be low, easier to carry, safer. If that weapon goes off and vents next to that person right there, there'll be some issues. Ears, eyes, really soft tissue, and there's problems with that. As I look back in the stack, the final officer, look at his trigger finger. It's on the trigger. It shouldn't be there. I've had officers in past training, they want to keep finger on the trigger. When they roll the safety, what happens? The gun discharges. So that is unsafe back there. So again, no eye protection. We've got issues here. I see this as a trainer, and again, we're going to say this is quality training. It's not. It's actually creating a hazardous or dangerous situation. Now, as we look at the stack from the rear, same thing. We've got muzzles next to heads, soft tissue, no eye protection. We have a finger on the trigger right here. So that's an issue. Nobody's catching this at the paper. Nobody's catching this as a trainer, and we're putting those photos out open source on the internet, and there's issues here. So I like to go through this, point it out in a positive way, and not blast people, but trainers need to up their game, the tactics, the techniques. Now, the comps on rifles. Corey's going to put a couple videos in here on comps, and we start talking about what a comp will do to a face or an ear. We've got some video of cantaloupes replicating a head. Now, again, you've got to look at this, put it in context, but weapons have discharge, and sometimes people will shoot from the rear, which you're not supposed to do. So there's no reason all these weapons are up there creating a dangerous situation. Hi, Paul Howe, CSAT Way. We're at the pistol pit. We're going to do a little test today. I've got my friend here, Michael Souza from American Resistance and Black Rifle Company. Is that correct?
Black Rifle Customs.
Customs. Oh, yeah. Out of Garrison, Texas. So I shoot his rifles. great equipment, great builder. So if you happen to have the time, look him up. Okay. So you get a little bit of a register right now, depending on what we're looking at is it's going to vent, and especially side of a person's head. All right, what we've got, a sideways muzzle brake. Again, think about your ears catching this pressure. You're clear hot, sir. Officer here, too far back. Officer here, elbow exposed. I have a case history, major police department in Dallas. What happens is an officer further back in the stack, like that, shot and hit the lead officer in the elbow, powderized. And what happens is they had to fuse the elbow, and that officer basically had to go to another job assignment because somebody shot from the rear. So what happens is anytime those muzzles are up, that's a no-go. There's no target. You can't see through that. You cannot clear extensively through that. Some special ops guys brought this in, so, oh, this is a way to do business. It's not. It's dangerous. It's unsafe. And we're transferring this to police officers in this situation here. And what happens is these folks are mandated 16 hours of training every 2 years. Do you think they're going to remember any of this in a real world incident? Do you think they're going to practice more? They're going to take these carry positions to a range and live fire them? No. Normally they're going to do a low ready. So why aren't we doing those tactics and techniques here? Why is this being allowed in the state, especially to an agency that just had problems? We're creating, that's an unsafe firing position up on gun like that, with an officer that A, that far back, and B, that muzzle that high. He doesn't have a target. Why is the muzzle up? Now, again, we see this, line of sight, line of bore. Again, you've got to think bullet and then the blast too. So again, we've got a lot of issues right here. When I go back to these stills and I see people in the rear, that is not a good position. She's lost hinge point, just a whole bunch of different things. It will not live fire correctly. Officer back here, again, watch his trigger finger. Where is it? It migrates into the trigger guard. Nobody's catching this, and they're putting these stills out on basically open source the internet. And so, got problems with that. Now, let's take it one step further. What happens is we've got a target here in a room they shot. I'm going to guesstimate 7 yards. So what happens is with SIMs, first, the eye protection. SIMs can run at 400 feet per second, rifle SIMs. And what happens is they can bounce back. They can hit hard objects and do a bunch of different things. Eye protection first. Next, marksmanship. If you look at this target, that's unacceptable for people going into a school. Corey's going to put in a video. I did a 7-yard test with the rifle SIMs to show you what it's capable of doing. And what happens is right here, this, they're not shooting on a flat range. They're not applying those fundamentals when they go in. And to put a target like this in an article that goes out, and I'm supposed to have confidence in officers going into schools, is unacceptable. So a lot of stuff here to look at and think about. This is a rifle sim bolt. Rifle sims to check accuracy, 7 yards. Going hot. All right, let's go check out the target. All right, haven't shot this drill before. What I did is, that one felt good. It could have been me. I was aiming right here. I know a 2.5-inch offset, so we're 7 yards room distance. This one, I just held the black line right there, went through the pasty. So when you look at targets and simunition, can you hold people accountable? Yes, you can. So if you see a big group with simunitions, they're gonna have a big group with a rifle, and live ammo. So we've got to hold them accountable on sims too. They can do test fires, but they've got to go through all the same mechanics of seeing their front sight every time. I try to make this as positive as possible, but I see officers disabled from some of these tactics, techniques. What ends up happening is that means eardrums blown out, eyes, soft tissue injuries. Officers have shot other officers using poor techniques. I can go into court and articulate and bring in case histories of all this that has already happened before. And for us to put this stuff out as good training, it's unacceptable. We have better training, and the instructors have to have a better eye for this. They're not having that attention to detail. So I hope these points help you. You take care, be safe, and I will catch you on the range.